Yes, guys, and welcome back to another instant reaction. It is 1-0 to the Arsenal and our first win against Newcastle all season. I hate that I had to preface it with that statement, but mate, how are you doing on a win that basically means that Isaac is a gooner at this point? That
Mm.
is the ramification of this. But what did you make? First thoughts on the game and how you felt?
The first half was really disappointing. I thought
Yeah.
it's just like the intensity, aside from any tactical tweaks, I thought, as we'll go on to speak about, I thought we platformed our wingers quite well. I thought we were playing very open, which was interesting, not how I'd play against Newcastle. I don't know why. Don't know if it was just Partey who was having a really, really poor game at the start. But I wasn't happy. But I also felt that it was a simple change, which is just actually start trying. As ridiculous as that sounds, just put some more effort in and it will make your lives easier, because the more we have the ball, the less we'll be chasing them.
Yeah.
And in the second half, we changed that, and the second half was a very, very professional performance. We didn't create many chances, but I was very, very happy with how we defended.
Yeah, it's one of those games that, again, like 2 games on the bounce, I don't know how to contextualize this, to be honest with you, because, we kinda spoke about it last time, so I won't rehash the conversation, but the first half to second half performance, it's annoying. I wouldn't say it's worrisome because I understand the context that we're in, but it is quite annoying because, like you said, there was a lot of try hard should be a prerequisite, so to speak, for most teams. But I thought in this match particularly, we were very poor technically to start, like incredibly poor, especially in our first phase. I mean, we'll probably go on into individual performances, but the top 2 culprits for me were David Raya, uncharacteristically with his distribution, really struggling short to the point where he just kept going long to Bukayo Saka, who was getting visibly frustrated at it. And of course, Thomas Partey, I thought, had a really difficult match. Again, where it wasn't even just the passing, which I thought was a little bit off, but also there was this thing where, again, he was hunting individual battles, leaving the center of the pitch quite open. And, of course, we can talk about him running back to goal, but those 2 in particular struggled in the opening minutes. But as a whole, a really surprising, well, not surprising because he's been very good, but Kiwior for me, with probably his best performance in the entire run since he's been in the team. This was a very, very good performance from Kiwior. And I want to give him his flowers. We'll probably have a section on him. And like you said, as far as the platforming goes, I thought it was a really interesting thing where, for me, for large portions of this game, we found Martinelli and Bukayo Saka far more inside. Those were normally the rotation. I think when people start to say, hey, I want this person outside and this person inside, it's a black and white structure debate for people. We
Yeah.
know that we go fluid between things, but as a whole, there's a certain proportion of time that you're going to spend in one area of the pitch versus the other. That's just factually that's kind of how it's going to go. And I just thought in this match, there was much more of a concerted effort to get those 2 in particular central. And it led to a couple interesting knock-on effects. We were even talking in a group chat, the Ben White runs, where, yes, he was fit, but the incisiveness of going on the inverted run was something really nice to see. There was some little quirks, but again, that first half was something that was a lot to be desired, a lot left, a good change in the second half that resulted in a pretty decent performance. I don't know if I'd go as far to say like it was vintage in the second half, but it was decent, it was competent, and the energy that was lacking in the first was there in the second.
What I also enjoyed about the second half was the controlled nature of it. Is that
Yeah,
as I said before, we didn't need to run as much as we were in the first half, because actually we were just not giving the ball away. So it's like, do
yeah,
the simple
yeah.
stuff right, and it will make the whole game easier. And one person we'll get onto, but Calafiori, and
Mate,
the way he changed the game. And I mentioned it kind of when he first joined, and this was never a dig at Gabriel, but I thought in certain games Calafiori would start left centre back, because
mhm,
he just has that ability to roam into the opponent's block and cause trouble. And unfortunately, when you're 6'4" like Gabriel, it's very, very difficult to do that. And
yeah,
Gabriel is good at it, but neither Kivior's long passing is very good, but again, in tight spaces, he doesn't make the difference like that. Whereas Calafiori, you wouldn't know where he was playing at times. He found himself very high up the pitch, often even overlapping on the left. And what I really like about him is he chooses the first pass and makes it. So there was a brief period where he found himself quite high up on the left, and he's playing first time football. And that makes all the difference. What really, really frustrated me in the first half with Partey because he was technically really poor, he ended up then taking 5 touches to release the ball to compensate for that. And by that time, Newcastle have settled into their block. And as good an attack as you can be, it's always going to be difficult when a team does that.
Absolutely. And I think Calafiori probably even deserves his own section just because for me, I don't know about you, but I've seen so much criticism of him, and I get it. It's a frustration about having not seen him on the pitch. But as far as talent level goes, the in possession ability that he poses the ceiling's incredible. And I think the biggest thing that I picked up on is he cares about the second pass in a sense, where it's not just, okay, I'm trying to find an open man, but I'm concerned where my role is to receive a further pass, whether it's a wall pass, whether it's making a run to make it easier for the passer to then pass somewhere else. He is very good at understanding tempo. And that is something that I think that we struggled with in the first half. And in general, our buildup we just weren't taking care of the ball, mate. Like, it was pace of pass, it was decision making, it was sloppy. And I think in the second half, a lot of that stuff changed. And the one thing that I would say broadly for us, at least, is it was so nice to see Kai Havertz come back on. He looked a little bit good in terms of some of his frame, people saying he looked buff and all that. But I think the one thing that we missed was really that reference. Like, when we have a press that is as intense as Newcastle's can be, and how much they can have physical athletes in the middle of the park, you need a reference. It doesn't have to be Kai, by the way, but we just lacked as a team a reference through the center of the park to play off of in the first half, really. There was really a tough time for us to pivot, I felt. We struggled technically, but then when we got in trouble, we couldn't go over the top. So it became a kind of case of us just giving the ball away, and then we ended up defending. So that was really the story of the first half. Did you notice any significant changes beyond the try hard in the second, or any major performances that you wanted to highlight before? Because we will get into specific players really soon.
I'm trying to think specific players because as we kind of both alluded to, it wasn't a vintage performance by any means.
No,
I don't think we played that well, so I don't want to go around going, "Oh, Lewis Skelly was unbelievable, Saka was unbelievable." I thought most of them were fine. Someone who we've given criticism a lot in recent weeks, and on the try hard point, I thought Ødegaard put such a shift in the second half. Actually, I thought his pressing was much better. And it's what you expect from your captain, of course. But when Rice is doing what he's doing, it does help to see Ødegaard then raise the level, because otherwise it's a little bit embarrassing. And nice that Ødegaard did again get the assist for the goal. So he's a long way off where he needs to be, of course. But I thought he looked closer to his normal self today than he has done. And I still don't think that's the solution, but I appreciated what I saw from him today compared to, I don't know what you thought of his performance.
Yeah, it was one of those where I thought, again, I was looking for praise points in possession, but out of possession, I was back to trust, if that makes sense. Like, in the last couple of weeks, I felt that there were times where even out of possession, I was seeing issues with Martin Ødegaard. And I'm thinking, okay, if anything, that's a baseline perfect that he gives us. If you want to rank attributes in terms of leading the press and what he's able to do for Arsenal, it's a 10 out of 10 consistently. But that even started to falter for me in the last couple of weeks. But here, I agree with you. I thought he was very good in terms of closing angles down, being able to organize and stop running through us. Like, there was a significant problem in the first half. A lot of that stemmed from Partey and a little bit deeper in what we were doing. But still, we weren't compact as a team, generally speaking. And I think when he's on it, he allows us to be compact. And it's more of a vocal leadership as well. Like, it's not just the intensity, which he does carry a lot of in terms of really leading that first trigger, but it's also just understanding when to go, when not to go. So that is the thing that I felt that really improved in the second half. And, I do want to go into probably individual players. I want to quickly ask you the impact of Declan Rice in his most productive season for Arsenal and that goal, because the reason I think I want to highlight this, mate, is if anything, I would actually classify this as one of the few games Arsenal scammed. Guys,
yes,
it doesn't happen.
We've been crying out for that for so many years, by the way. Every time and we've deserved it, because Newcastle this season, the amount of XG we've accumulated, it was nice to finally cash in one or two.
100%. And I did want to highlight that because, look, it's a moment, right? And look, it is okay sometimes. And like we've said, I don't think this was a vintage performance. I think I don't know, lucky is maybe a step too far, but we did earn our own luck in a sense. And I actually don't want to stray too much from that point because we haven't been lucky for what seemed like 18 months longer. I can't remember the last time we really scammed a game.
Yeah.
And so from my
Leeds,
perspective,
0-0.
it comes like, yeah. Not a bad show. But that's the point, right? So Declan comes up with a moment, and for me, it's a brilliant individual moment. It's something that Declan has been doing quite a bit, actually. That top of the box on the right-hand side, first time hit. We even started doing it with Partey the season before. Like, it is a pattern of play that we definitely look into. But I mean, the execution is completely different. The ability for Declan to step up, where, by the way, he was injured going into this game. And he looked it, for me, actually. He looked quite leggy in this match. You could tell it wasn't right. But mate, he steps up again to deliver a seriously, incredibly technical finish. Like, I don't know about you, and I don't want to make this point, but anyone who has played first time, edge of the box, whip, bottom corner, across the face of goal is not something that you're like, you're going, it's a ping. You're bragging about that every time. And yeah, mate, it was a brilliant hit. What do you make of finally being able to scam a result and us having individual players step up? Is it just a quality thing at this point?
Do you know, well, ironically, that was kind of the performance of a champion. That's what they would
Yeah,
say if we won the league. If Liverpool won that 1-0, they'd say, that's the performance of champions. But you're right. What I think we've done in the past a lot is try to win games tactically. And I
yeah,
think that can cause mental fatigue, and that can, over a season, you won't necessarily win the XG battles. But if you sometimes lean on your quality and you do have some players that are just better than the other players on the pitch, use that.
yeah,
If you can platform them. And to go back to Rice, as you mentioned, he was injured or not fully fit. The best players create moments. You can see that
yeah,
Saka still isn't fully right, but he still has those moments in him. He still, if he gets 1v1, will still beat Livramento and put in a dangerous ball. And no, just with Rice, I've made two players. I can't remember if it was on this podcast, the Yaya Toure and the Gerrard comparisons, and the goal today only supports that. Yaya Toure many a time found that zone on the edge of the box and whipped it across
His
goal.
idol.
And yeah, and Gerrard the same. So I've said before, I struggle with Rice's position at times because he's so good in the six, but you're limiting a Ferrari to a 60 zone. Like, sometimes you've just got to admit the talent and say Gerrard would be further up the pitch as well, because you've got to allow him to roam. And that
Yeah,
first half today, I think, was the perfect example of why we need Zubimendi. Someone who can like read the tempo of a game, someone who knows when to slow it down and speed it up, and just someone who has the quality to put his foot on the ball and make the accurate pass. Partey at times makes wonderful line breakers, but he's not. I don't know. He's not that Rodri type role. I just don't think he's got the poise for it. And it can lead to first halves like we had today, which was difficult to watch.
yeah. Podcast listeners will know I made a recent analogy about a clutch with Thomas Partey, and my whole thing is the gas pedal and the idea about when to go. And anyone who drives manual knows that in order to get yourself into gear, you need to play with the clutch a bit. Sometimes it's a little bit of pressing. Sometimes you got to lay it off a bit. You got to play that clutch so that you can get it in gear. And at times, we don't strike that balance well enough in our first phase. We don't strike the balance where it's either way too slow or way too fast. And very rare do we choose moments in a game in which we speed, then we slow. Then we may slow for a little bit, then we speed. Like, that timing about when to give it and when not to give it is something that we definitely struggle with, I think, in our first. That's probably the only first phase problem I've had with us this season. I thought we've had better solutions centrally since, I don't know, maybe Everton for the most part. Like, there was definitely a point at the beginning of the season, our central progression had an issue. But I'd say from end of November, December, around that Everton game onwards, we found solutions centrally. But our tempo and our pace, those areas of kind of the game were things that we struggled with in the first phase. And like you said, I think Zubimendi is going to make a huge world of difference, because in my time watching him, he's not, I wouldn't call him volume passer in a sense. Like, he's clearly incredibly technical, a very good passer. If you look at him broadly, you're not going to see 100 passes and necessarily a death by 1,000 passes. But this is a guy that understands the tempo of a game to a different level, probably the best in Europe. This idea of where the next pass is going to go. And that for me has probably been Arsenal's biggest issue in the first phase as far as build-up goes. But another way to transition kind of from build-up, mate, I kind of want to give you the floor, maybe talk to me about Kiwior in general, because we're now approaching, for me, what has been his most complete performance today. And I have been somebody that has absolutely criticized Kiwior. I felt like he's been good. He's never gotten a fair shake objectively as far as runs in games, but he's had poor moments. And I don't want to get away from it. When you look at the season, you look at the Liverpool game as a really poor moment from himself. But then you start to say, how many center backs as a whole, by the way, can lose a Gabriel level talent, walk in, and from an individual standpoint, not be the one to let us not reach our objectives? Like, we've actually had like sample of what a Rob Holding, and by the way, again, it's not to compare, but we know that one player can affect a team. So that could have swung the other way is what I'm getting at. So the idea that he's done so well and then capped off, I think after however many games it was consecutively with his best performance, it deserves praise for me. It wasn't a given Kiwior would succeed, I guess is my long-winded rant. It was not a given, and he has. So he deserves extra credit as far as his performances for me. But what did you make of it?
Well, he's absolutely surpassed expectations of what we hoped he could do in this period while Gabriel was out. You
Yeah.
kind of expect a 6, 7 out of 10. Just don't make it about you. Just kind of, as long as people aren't talking about you, we'll be happy. In fact, people are talking about him, but not because he's made any errors, because he's been fantastic. He stood up, and I think the Real Madrid game was definitely a watershed moment for him, because he looks so much more confident now. And I'm not talking about on the ball. He's always been quite confident on the ball. In the duels, he just seems to be approaching duels with so much more confidence. And he's left us with a conundrum, because now I look at it and think, should we sell him? Because I'm like, yes, we could make good money for him. Calafiori would be our first choice left centre back. Kiwior then becomes quite far down the pecking order. But I look at it and think, do you choose to sell someone who's 24, 25, would, like, you know what you're going to get from him? And if you sell him and sign someone else, you therefore have an unknown entity. But I'm just so impressed by him. And I really do feel that if he does move on, whoever gets him will get a really, really talented defender, because he will have a run of games with them and he will continue that confidence. I think the trouble with us is that he's always either been put at left back or right centre back. And when he has had a run in the games, it's been 2 or 3 games. So as I say, I've been really impressed with him. And interestingly, the weaknesses that we've seen from him compared to Gabriel is actually just Gabriel's aura. The way Gabriel leads the defensive line, the way Gabriel clearly elevates Saliba, what we've seen in the past couple of weeks, is the only thing that I could say Kiwior hasn't done since Gabriel's been in. But on the ball, tremendous. In the duels, much better. And he's not Gabriel, but who is? I'd put Gabriel as top 3 in the world. So
I'd even go further as far as what Gabriel does as a profile. Probably the best dueling center back I see in the world, honestly. And you know, he's like on the other end of the spectrum as far as like superpowers, right? Like you've got your Salibas, which are your orchestrators and deep buildup. You're very nice on the ball leaders that you say, wow, that is something different I don't see. Gabriel is one of those that he's the bodyguard, and he does it the best in the world. And Kiwior had a tough job to do. And you know what, mate? Like, I want to go further, because there was this level of authority that he kept us in it in that first 20 minutes. He was first to the headers consistently. And that for me is actually one of his biggest weaknesses. It is consistently being aggressive to be first in your duel, because I actually think he has pretty solid fundamentals aerially in terms of getting there and actually getting himself on the ball. There's some players that shirk away from that challenge. He actually doesn't when he times it well, but he hasn't always had that authority, that aggression, that ability to really meet the ball first. Hasn't always been a part of his game. So from my perspective, it was brilliant there. And then there was even some stuff in possession. Look, mate, like, we know the technical ability, but there was the one pass, I forget where it was, but he sets Martinelli off from a deep first-time cross and sets Martinelli into a run. And it's from, I'd say, about the middle third of the pitch. And we have already just been in the final third. And it's a first time standing half space cross. And I'm like, we don't do that enough. I think maybe
Yeah.
Ben is maybe the only one that I see potentially do that. And even then, it's not consistent. And so to do those kind of passes in a time when we were devoid of ideas was like, that's brilliant, mate. Like, you're taking ownership now to try to change something that we've been struggling with. So I agree with you. Whatever happens, I am thankful. I am not here saying I'm glad he's going to go if he goes. And he does fit that bench warmer trident that I talked about really earlier in the season. That is like, how do you find somebody who is incredibly versatile? Because he is, by the way, didn't look out of place right center back in terms of changing the angles. How do you find somebody pre-prime, versatile, consistently available, and good enough that you can trust to play 8-10 games in a row? Who fits those descriptions as a bench player, like, consistently?
Speaking of his availability as well, he has missed 23 days of football in his entire career. So
Yeah,
obviously he's not been consistently a starter, but even in training, he's not getting injured. So that is someone you can rely on compared
yeah,
to Tomiyasu, who arguably is a better player. But if you don't have that availability, then you can't really consider him part of the squad.
yeah.
To round off the Kiwior conversation, I think to do it justice, can you pull up his stats on the screen? Because I'm
Sure.
looking at them
FBref?
now, and I don't think FBref will be out. No. Sorry, I mean from the game today, because
Yeah.
he won 80% of his duels, 4 out of 5, 50% of his aerial duels, 2 out of 4. Um, Made a last man challenge, 2 blocks, 10 clearances, 6 headed clearances, 2 interceptions. I just think it shows how much defensive work he got through today. And when you've got Calafiori next to you, who's roaming more, I think that kind of highlights the responsibility he took today in defence. And yeah, it will be a shame to see him go, but you can see why a team like Napoli, reports are suggesting, are in for him. If you can't find the stats, don't worry, George.
I was literally trying to go and look for them as I'm on Twitter to do it. I think I did finally actually find something. But it was like 10 clearances, 2 interceptions, 2 blocks. Let me try to share this because I think I have found it. George struggles with tech. Shock, guys. I'm sorry. Not as quick as this as Alex. But I agree with you just in general as far as the Kiwior performance being quite dominant because, these aren't small numbers as far as the defensive performance goes, right? 10 clearances, 91% pass accuracy, 2 interceptions, 2 block shots, 4 out of 5 ground duels won. And, that is not even getting into like the in possession ability that he was able to do. So that is I think a testament to him and his ability to kind of replace what we needed. And I don't think that was a given, mate. I really don't. Like, especially when you look at Kiwior as a broad whole, his biggest weaknesses potentially were that aggression, was that defensive ability and performance. And here he is on show being able to do it. I want to give you a chance to maybe highlight somebody instead of giving you a prompt. Is there somebody in this match that you generally felt deserved, I don't know, praise is the wrong word, but maybe a reflection point, like a stock rising, if you will, from today's performance?
I hate to give you a terrible answer, but there is no one who, apart from Kiwior, there's no one who actually exceeded my expectations. I will be honest. There are
Yeah.
people who, in pivotal moments, for example, Martinelli, I think today and the last game of the season is against Southampton, so it won't mean as much. Today could have really been a moment for him to stake his claim, and essentially him and Trossard, one of them should be playing for the shirt, because if we are signing a left winger, then I don't know how much room there's going to be for both of them. And again, from Martinelli, considering we platformed him, I thought it was just an average performance. And like, sure, not everyone stood out in the game, but problem is I'm waiting for Martinelli to stand out and gain some momentum against Liverpool. He always plays well versus Liverpool, but just didn't see him build upon that. And today was another game where I thought, yes, the left wing position is a position that we can upgrade on, because if you put Rodrigo or Semenyo or Umbermo, who apparently we're linked with, that's an interesting one, in
Oh,
the
I love that.
positions that Martinelli was in, I just think they'd make a bigger difference. I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, I think the Martinelli conversation is one of those that's going to carry into the summer as far as, I really do feel he's one of those players that is dependent on the spectrum of environment versus individual quality. And there are times in which he really shows that the environment doesn't let him thrive. And there are times where individually he doesn't let himself thrive. And so it's one of those that I think, depending on how big you are on the individual talent, is how patient you might be with somebody like that. And there's other players in the team that I think are in that boat of environment versus individual thing. For me in this match, I saw some good runs, but I just never saw him getting found. And I think even Saka was kind of guilty of that. Like it was in one sense, I saw the system I wanted, these two central, but we weren't able to find them. And that's a little bit on the players as much as it is us for not being able to play the ball through. But in looking at the stats, it's kind of tough. I kind of put you in a difficult spot for choosing a player because, again, this is one of the few times looking at the stats where we did, in fact, cheat a result. You look at the expected goals, 2.3 to 0.8. Shots were fairly even, 14 to 12. I mean, you're looking at possession, fairly split. We won on the most important metric that we care about on the Cannon podcast in terms of field tilt. But if you look at kind of some of the expected threat numbers, Newcastle with a little bit more expected threat, 3.4 to 2.2. Kind of looking overall at the running XG, you could kind of tell, look, we had our moments, but as a whole, Newcastle were the better side and having the better chances individually. I mean, some of those first half chances were pretty strong, just in general, accumulating most of their XG in the first half, because there were times when I thought they did a really good job. And of course, that kind of foray at the end was something that Newcastle created. Some pretty significant chances with a lot of touches in our box, and we did get out of it a couple times. Raya, for as much as he struggled in distribution, there were some times that I felt he did really well in terms of some of his shot stopping. But as a whole, the only thing that we really care about on the Cannon podcast. So, I mean, did we really cheat when we win on something like this? So convincingly, of course, the field tilt. No, it wasn't. It was something that I think showed a little bit of a story, to be honest with you. But I do want to maybe end on what this potentially means going forward. And of course, the last game of the season, where's your mind at as far as how we approach this? How significant, I did joke at the top of the podcast about Isaac being a gooner from this. How significant is it from the context aspect about this top four race for Arsenal? I mean, the whole narrative is if we lost this game, we could be looking at, again, needing a point against Southampton. So I don't want to understate the idea that the one time we chose to really cheat our XG was quite significant, and not going over 4 against Newcastle, getting a win, which I felt was important. Okay, it didn't result in a title, but it was important for me not to say that Newcastle beat us 4 times this season. It was important for me to put them under pressure as far as what they need to do to secure their own Champions League football. And I think it's important from an Arsenal perspective to end the season strongly. I don't care that it means that we're not winning a trophy, but I don't want to see us give up. And I think it's important to churn out results, even if it means scamming a result.
Just even in terms of optics, I think it's important because, yes, if we finished third this season, it would have been quite embarrassing. And people joke about finishing second in 3 years in a row. But ultimately, as someone who's going to join the club, you can say, look how close we are. We finished second. If we then finished third or fourth, you're looking at it thinking, this is significant regression. And this season has been a regression in terms of we've been worse this season. I don't think next season will be worse. I think we'll go back to being as good as we were previously, if not better, hopefully. But if we finished third or fourth this season, it would have been really, really tough to take. And I don't agree at all with this idea that, oh, why would you leave Newcastle to join Arsenal? But if Newcastle finished ahead of us, it would have looked ridiculous because they'd have won the cup final and then finished second. Fortunately, as you say, we scammed it at the right time for the first time in many years in somewhat a consequential game, but not as consequential as we've needed previously. But the last game is going to be nice because if for once we can relax. How long has it been since we've gone into a game thinking, of course the result matters, but I don't think I think it's been about 2 seasons that we've gone into a game with almost nothing on the line. If you consider last season, the last 18 games, we won 16, drew 1 and lost 1. And then the season before was the title where things capitulated at the end. So I think next week we will play really well, and I think we will batter Southampton, and you would just be able to see the weight lifted off the players' shoulders. And hopefully it'll be a really nice end to the season, considering all the shit that we've gone through. I really hope
Yeah.
that we can just end on a positive note, play some good football, and we can just wrap all these players up in cotton wool, because Saliba
Yeah.
injured today again. What is going on?
Yeah, the squad's done. It's in the red zone. It's been in the red zone. And it's
Mm,
one of those seasons that we need to rest, recover, rejuvenate, and reform, I'll say, as the last thing. Like, we need to do that. But I'm with you. On the last game of the season, I want to have fun. As much as we can get tactical. Like, I
the
want to
fans
enjoy.
deserve
I
it
want
too.
Yeah, yeah, they do. They do. And it is one of those things that I think that we need to maybe go out there and just try to put on a performance. Like, I want to experiment for next year. We're in a position now that we've guaranteed the Champions League. We're in a position now that I feel we need to start preparing for next season. And I'd like to see things and not see maybe people that are tired play. If we're looking at, Declan Rice, for example, he got himself up for this game because it was significant. Okay, I don't want to see you. If you're at
Yeah.
any orange level, I don't want to see you. Okay. And we need to start preparing, I think, for next season. As a whole, I'll probably end on this. Is there any last minute thoughts that you've got as far as the season? I know we haven't really given a ton of time. I'm sure you're probably going to do your own reflection. I'm sure we'll have you back on for one of those reflection pods at some point. But like quick minute, instant reaction thoughts. If I don't see you, quickly towards the end of the season, what do you make of it? What do you make of Arsenal in 2024, 2025?
I am quite a stoical person, George, and I see it from quite a stoical lens this season. Things were shit. A lot
Mhm.
went wrong. Like, everything that
Yeah.
could go wrong did go wrong. Sod's law. But ultimately, that happens, and when you're not a state-run club like Man City, you can't survive that. Liverpool finished fourth on the final day of the season because they went through the shit that season. Van Dijk did his ACL, and things went to pot. So yes, it was a terrible season, but I don't think you can consistently be at the top. I know we haven't won anything yet, but you can't consistently be at the top every single season. And the fact that we did as well as we did in the end was quite impressive. And we hung
Mhm.
on for a long time until the whole castle just came falling down. So shit season, but don't lose your head over it. Pick things back up, sort what we need to sort in the transfer window, extend who we should be extending. I don't think
Mhm.
Partey should be extended at all. That makes no sense to me. We saw it today, and with all the availability issues, everything surrounding him, move on from him, recreate the squad, and go into next season with these players another year matured, with Miles and Ethan another year older, and with a 15-year-old Max Dowman probably in the squad. But I am so excited to watch him in pre-season, which is terrible of me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you are more than most.
You're stealing my thunder, I was gonna say. Um, I've brought him to the dark side, guys. Yeah, mate, it's been one of those seasons. And like you said, I do agree that you can't always like Man City changed the perception of everybody as far as
Yeah,
going every year being elite, not just good, but elite. And the one thing that I do say, not to like turn like a negative into a positive, but if this is our shit season, getting
yeah,
second and going into the semifinals, it shows quite a bit as far as how this team has progressed. I do think that there's been a severe failure, an abject failure from the board as far as our approach to this season. I do feel I like all the words that are being said, but I am intently looking for action at this point. And I think one of my biggest lines in even a post reflection moment right now is I do not want to squint to see the idea, not just in terms of players, but in anything that we do moving forward. When we make a decision as a club, I don't want to squint to see, well, if you do this and you look at it in this light, this is how it can be successful. I do not want to approach any kind of decision with that lens. That includes squad players, that includes maybe Mikel as far as his use of substitutes, whatever issue you want to say, the PGMOL, whatever issue, fitness. I don't want to squint to see the solution that Arsenal will give us, let's call it. So I think that will be my demand for next season, in which I need to see us be really aggressive in saying, I want Arsenal to be favorites for the title. And I think that if I can't say that with chest and with confidence at the end of the summer, I will have considered it a failure at this point. And that's my biggest reflection point from this season, where there's a lot that has gone wrong. We haven't been at the races as well. Like, there's individual responsibility towards this, not just things happening to us. It's a combination of things. But yeah, I really don't want to have to squint to determine if Arsenal are good next year in any capacity. So that's my
And
biggest thing.
the guy who won us the game today, Declan Rice, is the perfect example of that.
Yeah,
We went into that transfer window saying he's our guy, we're going to get him, and that is how we should be approaching. That he could have won us the Champions League this season, put us so much closer towards the Premier League. That is the type of caliber player we should be looking at. Let's not be messing around thinking, oh, this person could do a job. Find the guy and get him, because there's no reason why we can't access those talents now. We're one of the biggest clubs in the world.
I agree. I agree. And that's a perfect way to end it. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us through this season. Thank you so much for sticking with us as a whole. And thank you, James, for coming on. What's been a really good Kiwior-esque level performance in the last month. You've been able to step in and absolutely carry on and let us perform the way we can on the Cannon podcast. So thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to let the people know where they can find you, of course?
As always, you can find me only on Twitter at AFC James, but with an X instead of the A. And you can find George, because I'm sure he doesn't promote himself enough, at GeorgeV_AFC on Twitter.
Yes, thank you so much. And of course, you can find James here on the Cannon podcast, which we will hopefully have many more guest appearances throughout our time here. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for this season. And we will be back with some more content. Of course, you can always do all that fun stuff, like, comment, subscribe. I don't do a very good job of promoting, but we do love it. And if you enjoy the content, you can click the link down below in the description to access our 7-day free trial on Patreon, which you have a world of opportunity. And I won't do the Rohan line of what you can find, but you can find a ton of stuff down there. We appreciate all of your guys' work. Thank you so much. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.